Hey everyone, welcome to the Restoration Podcast, a podcast of hope and healing. Listen as we hear real stories told by real people. Our prayer is that these conversations bring encouragement to your life. All right, hey everyone, welcome to the Restoration Podcast. Dude, I don't know about you, but I'm so excited for this to start.
Dream come true.
We literally talked about this, when was the first time we talked about this?
It had to have been shortly after I started that I brought up that I wanted to start a youth ministry podcast. And then you were like, dude, I wanted to start a podcast too. And then we were like, let's start a podcast.
So maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
And then, but here we are. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And so if you are a regular attender of Morningside Assembly, the church we're at, you know we had a week of prayer in September, and we did a live prayer podcast, and we did something really similar to this, and it was really well received, and it was also a lot of fun. And so when we finished that, I asked our senior pastor, Pastor Johnny, I said, hey, would you be interested in seeing us do that on a regular basis? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So before we dive in today, I want to give a shout out or a thank you to a few people. First, our senior lead pastor, Pastor Johnny. Thanks for giving us the green light on doing this. We really appreciate it. I also want to thank Hannah King, our media director here at Morningside, who you can't see, we can see. She's right there. She's running everything. She's our editor. She's our producer. And so you wouldn't see or hear us if she weren't here. So Hannah, thank you for all that you do, not just for this, but also for our church. And then I also want to thank Pastor Ben Miller, lead pastor at Beacon Church in Elk Point, South Dakota. Is that correct?
Yes.
Ben is just a really well-rounded guy. He's well-versed in audio, stream, software, video, lighting, and so a lot of what you see and hear, he gave us his input. So Pastor Ben, thank you. This wouldn't be possible without you. Fun fact, actually, there's one little piece of equipment that's like 2 inches long that if it weren't for that, none of this would be possible, and Pastor Ben's the one that let us use that today. So seriously, none of this would be happening without you. So thanks, Pastor Ben. We appreciate it. But Pastor Scott, can you take a moment and just kind of tell people who are listening and are watching what is this podcast about? Like, what is the Restoration Podcast?
So we sat down and we had a lot of conversations and just throwing out ideas and stuff like that. And, you know, one of the things that our thing is we want to bring hope and healing to our community, and not only our community, but the world, and the best way we can do possible. And so we thought, you know, we've got a lot of good things going for us here, you know, live streaming service and having our services here every week. But we thought, you know, what's something we can do to put out a midweek encouragement to try to help people bring hope and healing to their lives. So this is kind of just us talking about ministry through our point of view and things that we've seen, conversations we've had, prayers that we've prayed, and also conversations that we're going to get to have with like our pastors from our church and guest speakers that come in. We're going to have conversations with them about ministry and stuff like that to try to effectively bring hope and healing.
Yeah.
Through this, be a vehicle to get there.
Yeah, and that's it. And so I also want to clarify what this podcast isn't or what it's not. This is not a like how to do ministry or why your church should do ministry like our church. Pastor Scott and I aren't even 30 years old yet. And so I don't know about you, but I'm not comfortable sitting here, you know, giving advice to other pastors. You know, we're just here as vessels and to share our experience. This is also not like a devotional type podcast. I know those exist as well. We may, you know, reference scripture, or we will give biblical, godly advice or opinions on things, but we're not going to be here, you know, breaking down stuff. You won't see Pastor Scott behind a pulpit. You know, if you're wanting sermons and stuff, watch our live stream on our YouTube channel.
Saith the Lord.
Yeah, that we won't have that. But yeah, we're just here to give a platform to people to share their stories, to give you hope and healing. And so, like Pastor Scott said, we'll have different guests. I want to keep those as a surprise, but it'll be interesting to dive in, and really encouraging, I think, to hear testimonies and stories. So with that being said, today we're going to hear Pastor Scott's story. And I'm looking forward to hearing some of these details. Why you're the way you are.
Oh man, it's a long story.
And so can we pin that down in 30 plus minutes? Why Pastor Scott is who he is, why he is.
It was a warm June 4th, 1997.
Oh my gosh.
This Ray, I'm just kidding. I don't want to be that guy.
No, please don't.
From day one.
I know, right? But Pastor Scott is our student ministries or youth pastor here at Morningside, and he started
September 19th of 2022.
September 2022. So he's been here a little over a year. He just passed his year mark this past September, and in my opinion, has just been doing a great job running our youth ministry. You've only been here a year, and we've seen some really cool things, minor tweaks, and we've seen some amazing things happening down here with our youth. But before you got here, where were you? Where are you originally from, and where were you right before this season here?
So, born and raised, Broken Arrow, Oklahoma.
I am so sorry to hear that.
You're from Houston.
You knew
man.
that was
Come
coming.
on. Come on.
Oklahoma is a state you drive through. That's about
Houston-
it. All right, continue.
We'll get to that.
Continue.
Later. We'll talk about that when your time's up.
Yeah.
Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. Grew up there my whole life. Went to the same church. I actually have a fresh perspective because I didn't grow up in an Assemblies of God church. So coming into the Assemblies of God fellowship as a newbie was a little scary, but has been one of the greatest things that I've ever experienced. The Assemblies of God fellowship that they have is just one of the things that I believe is 100% necessary in ministry. The fellowship, the growing together, the meeting together of minds, and kind of like what we're doing here today, like talking out situations, talking out how we dealt with situations and stuff like that. But grew up at a church called Rhema Bible Church, went there my whole life. They have a Bible college attached to it. I actually graduated in 2019 from there with a minor in ministry fundamentals and a major in student ministries from the ages of newborns all the way to high school. So, I have not a lot of knowledge, but I have knowledge of those different areas. But it's one of those things that I was willing to learn just because I wanted to have that knowledge just in case a church I worked at ever needed it. So, was there my whole life.
So you were born and raised and attended the same church your whole life.
Yep.
Childhood all the way until college. And that church is what hosts the college you eventually attended,
Yes.
correct? So technically Morningside is only the second church you've been a part of your whole life, right?
Yep.
That's really cool. And then are you an only child? Do you have siblings? How many did you have?
So I'm the youngest of 6 siblings. There's my brother Craig, he's the oldest, then my sister Jessica. Craig's married to his wife Kirsten. Jessica is married to Jared, and her son is Isaac. Then there's John, he's single. There's my sister Melissa, she's married to Elijah. There's my brother Kyle, he's married to Maddie, and they have 3 kids, 2 twin boys, Hunter and Weston, and then their daughter, and then there's me. I'm the youngest. I'm married to Kendra, and I have 2 kids, Theodore and Renee.
So no offense, but I totally lost track when you're breaking down your family trees. So how many siblings total?
6.
6. Okay.
5 of the 6 are married.
5 of the 6 are married. Got it. And then would you say that church was kind of a priority for y'all when y'all were growing up? Or not a priority, but like it was part of your lifestyle? So
yeah. So my family is actually from New Jersey.
I didn't know that.
I had all my other siblings besides me and my brother Kyle were born in New Jersey. My parents were in New Jersey, and they were just looking for something spiritually deeper and better. And so they actually came and visited Rhema during one of their meetings that they had during the winter. They came down here, and then they realized, this is where we want to be. And so they moved to
Oklahoma.
Moved to Oklahoma. Me and my brother Kyle were the only 2 born in Oklahoma. And so my parents moved us down to that church to grow up in a faith-based church, a church that believed what the Bible said, believed about speaking the Bible over your life, believed about having a relationship with God. Moved us down there, and as I like to say it, I was born one Sunday in church the next. So from 1995 is when they moved there, and then 96, my brother Kyle was born in February, and then June of 1997, I was born.
I never knew that about you, the New Jersey thing.
Yeah.
I always thought that your family like went back generations in Oklahoma.
Nope.
Okay,
we
so
were
I don't
first timers.
Yeah, I don't look down as much on you now. So no, okay.
Thanks, I appreciate that. It means a lot.
Oklahoma. Okay, so Pastor Scott, you were born and raised in Oklahoma, same church, ministry. Tell us a little bit about your wife. How did you meet her? When did she enter the picture? Are y'all like? Oh, actually, let me backtrack before that. I was gonna say, are you high school sweethearts? But that's not possible, right? Because
No, we met in college.
yeah, because you were homeschooled, right?
Yeah, that's funny.
No,
That's a good
no,
one.
that
was
wasn't a
good. It was
joke.
good.
I was
No, I
just-
appreciate it. It was
I was just
honestly,
saying.
it's the best.
Okay, anyway, but yeah, how did she enter your
So
life?
with me and my wife, I was actually in a season where I graduated. I graduated from the private Bible college at Rhema in 2019, and I was just ready to go out into ministry. I wanted to step out, and I wanted to do that. And so I was entering into that time and that where I wanted to step out, and I was actually helping a friend move from Oklahoma to Amarillo, Texas, to pursue ministry. And while we were there was an opportunity that came about a internship, and they were offering it to me and stuff like that. And I was like, I was strongly considering it. I wouldn't say I was convinced that I was going to do it. I was strongly considering it. And then that Sunday morning at that church, there was just a time of worship and prayer, and we were praying. And the pastor, his name was Pastor Loper, he just said, "There's someone in here that's about to make a decision, and God's trying to get a hold of you and tell you to stop." And I was like, "Oh man, that's somebody else. That's not me. That's somebody else." And so, just sitting there, I was like, "Man, I wonder who that is." And then he was like, "Whoever that is, I want to pray for you." And I was like, "Oh man, who is this?" And I'm like looking around the crowd trying to find out who it is. And the Lord was like, "Scott, it's you. Go up there." I was like, "Oh." And so I went up there and I was standing there and he prayed for me. And I just heard the Lord as clear as day say, when it's your time to leave, you will know without a shadow of a doubt.
Mm-hmm.
And so to this day, I thank God that he spoke those words into my life and I stayed, because that next October, so that had to have been in July. The October after that July, I came into a late skate at Rhema, and I looked on the skating rink floor, and I saw this girl, and I looked at my roommate, and I said, "Bro, who is that?" He said, how am I supposed to know?" And I was like, "Okay, true." But I was like, he's like, "Go talk to her." And I was like, "No, I'm kind of scared. I'm not. I was homeschooled, as Aaron
There you
likes to
go.
point out.
Yeah.
So I was a little nervous about it, and so I was like, but I went over there and did what any great man of God would do, and just put my foot right in my mouth. And there was a kid dancing in front of us. He was a first-year student, a freshman. He was acting like a crazy kid, and I said, "Yeah, first years, am I right?" And I looked at my wife, and she said, "Yeah,"
Crickets.
and walked away. Me realizing that she was a first year and I just insulted her.
Oh my gosh.
I walked away, and then we didn't talk that was the first and the last time we talked for almost a year. And then I thank God for this every day, but she actually moved into the apartment next to mine.
Mm-hmm.
So we were neighbors, and I was like, well, now she's stuck. And so I love telling this story because it was so awkward. So it was one night we had a group of friends in our apartment. We'd all hang out downstairs in our apartment, just outside of our apartments, and talk. And it was just one night, and she was like, "Oh, I'm going to go upstairs and get ready and go somewhere." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to go get dinner." And so I was awkwardly walking upstairs behind her. Yeah. We get to the top, and I'm like, "Hey, I was just wondering, do you want to get lunch sometime?" And with the biggest smile on her face, she goes, "Yeah, for sure." And I was like, "Oh, that's so Midwesterner." And then me being the great man of God, I didn't want to be awkward. I just stuck up a fist.
Oh my gosh.
And we got a fist pound, and then we both went into our apartments. And I was like, I literally grabbed my head and said, "You just fist pounded her." And so at this point, I think it was the best decision I made, because I felt like if I hugged her, it would have been weird.
Yeah.
So I was like, fist pound, that's what I'm
Because then you go in for side, front, side.
Yeah,
like,
it's just an awkward discernment.
it's a good thing that the fist pump even worked out, because what if she was trying to shake your hand? It would have been this.
It would have been like this awkward mixing of hands, and it's just weird. But yeah, so we met at college. I asked her out. After I asked her out, I realized I have no way of communicating with this girl because I don't have her phone number. And so I got her phone number. Planned on going, that was a Tuesday I asked her out. We planned on going out on Sunday afternoon after church to get sushi. And it was actually great because I was so excited to go out with her. I couldn't wait. And so we were sitting at our friend's house, and I just looked at her and was like, "Do you want to go on a walk with me?" And Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night, we went on walks every one of those nights, and we walked around the church's campus and just talked, got to know each other and stuff like that. My wife likes to say that we went on the date. It was an amazing date. We sat in the sushi restaurant for like 5 hours talking.
Yeah.
It was awesome.
That's the best
Oh yeah, it was so
when you
good.
just talk.
And I found out she likes sushi, which was even better because I love sushi.
Yeah,
Um,
you all meant
and-
for each other.
oh yeah. And then it was kind of, she said she had a busy week the next week.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like she was ignoring me. We went on another walk, and I said, hey, I just kind of feel like, you just took a step back. I was like, hey, where you at? Like, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to force anything on you. I was like, I just really like you. I think you're amazing. I just want to see where this goes. And she was like, yeah, I'm just not ready to step into a relationship. I was like, yo, that's cool, whatever, I told her how I felt, that I liked her, that I could see a future with her
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And
And then you went in for a fist bump. No.
yeah, no, this time it was even better. So we were sitting at the bottom of the stairs. We both lived on the second floor. We were sitting at the bottom of the stairs talking, and I was like, all right, well, I'm gonna go. And she was like, no, let's stay and talk. So we stayed and talked for a little bit. And I looked at her and I was like, can I kiss you? And she was like, yeah.
Oh my God! How long do you know each other at this point?
We had known each other for a while, but this
How long
was,
were you been talking to each other?
this point it was 2.5 weeks.
Man, bold, fast
Yeah.
mover.
Yeah.
Did you propose that day too, or?
And, unlike many Christian boys, I did not.
Yeah.
But after that,
The rest kind
started-
of history.
yeah, rest is
Yeah.
history. Started dating. Had a season where we broke up for a week. It was just stupid.
I was gonna say a lot of couples that are very successful, like you guys that have strong marriages. I don't know why, but it's like every time I ask someone that has a strong marriage, they always say, "Yeah, we broke up for and it's like a pitiful amount of time, like
Yeah.
a week or a day, or
It puts it into
Yeah.
perspective. For me, it did. I was at that point we had been dating for a while, and
Yeah.
I was planning on proposing already. Had a ring, had everything, and we broke up, and it made me realize, I want to do life with this person. Like, I don't want anybody else. And so we sat down and had another honest conversation. I said, hey, I believe you're my wife. And she said, I believe you're my husband. And I said, all right.
That's cool.
And so I told my friends, we got back together, and then I was like, yeah, I'm not going to propose for 2 months though. That next Sunday we were in church, and I was sitting there praying, and I just heard the Lord say, you found your good thing. Stop waiting.
Dang. Yeah.
And so I woke up from a nap that afternoon, and I was like, I'm going to propose to her today.
Yep.
Took her to her favorite park, got her favorite coffee, and then asked her to spend the rest of her life with me, and the rest is history.
That's how you do it.
I was trying.
Smooth. That's awesome.
I made it seem a lot smoother than it was. She was truthfully the first girl I ever asked out.
Like
in
seriously.
person. Yeah.
Not like a
Not like, hey, you want to go get coffee?
yeah. Your
I
first serious relationship.
yeah.
That's awesome. And you've been married for 2 years?
Yes, actually, this last Monday. So today's Thursday. We're recording on Thursday, but this last Monday, we celebrated 2 years married.
That's crazy. Did it go by fast, you feel like?
I
You're not
describe
at that
it in a
point
way
yet.
of time-wise, it went by fast, but we've lived so much life in the 2
Yeah.
years we've been married. We had during our honeymoon, we got pregnant with our son, so we had our son 9 months after that, and then shortly after we had him, we got pregnant with our daughter, and so not only did we have 2 kids in 2 years,
kids,
but we
and then you
moved out of.
moved.
I moved from the state that
Yeah.
I knew my whole life. I stepped into full-time ministry.
Yeah.
And it's just it's been this, and we had a lot of people like, hey, maybe you guys should just chill out,
Right.
Don't step into ministry just yet and stuff like that. But we just knew that God called us, and
Yeah.
we're here. So
Yeah.
our actual prayers were when we were praying about moving up here. The Lord just put on my heart, and He said, "I want you to be an answer to prayer to Morningside Assembly." And I said,
That's what the
"Okay."
Lord told y'all.
I said, yeah. And I said, that's what
amazing.
we're going to do.
Yep.
And so when we moved up here, she was like, hey, do you want to go check out any other churches? Because she was worried I wasn't going to be comfortable. She loved this church.
Yeah.
She was just worried I wasn't going to be comfortable because I grew up in a bigger church.
Yeah.
She was worried I wouldn't be comfortable here. And I said, no, babe. I said, the Lord told us we're going to be an answer to prayers here. So that's what we're going to do. And then, applied for this job, and now I'm here.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So speaking of ministry, that was my next question to you was there a specific moment when you felt the call to do ministry? And if so, what was it? And then did you always know it was going to be youth ministry, or was it like, Lord, I'll do anything?
So my heart has always been, Lord, send me wherever, I'll do whatever.
Yeah.
And so anytime anybody asks me, oh, you think you're ever going to be an associate pastor? You think you're ever going to be a pastor? You think you'll ever be a missionary? Blah, blah.
Yeah.
I'm like, whatever the Lord tells me to do, I'll do it. I'm not opposed to any of it. But when I first heard the call to ministry, I was actually 8 years old. I was in kids' church on a Sunday morning. The lady speaking, her name was Karen Jensen, and she said, if any of you feel like you're called to ministry, just come down here and I want to pray for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, in my heart, I just felt like I was supposed to go down there.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as I remember she laid her hand on my head, and as soon as she laid her hand on my head and started praying for me, I just heard the Lord say youth ministry. And I remember afterwards she was asking testimonies about like what we experienced. And I said, when you prayed for me, I felt like a massive weight lift off of me.
Wow.
And I felt like I could hear the voice of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And so, 8-year-old kid hearing that, it's kind of one of those things you're just like, oh, back burner, I'm 8 years old. I'm not really I heard it. I told my parents, told my mom, I know what it was the Lord, and I know I'm going to stick with it, but you just kind of forget living life. You go about life being an 8-year-old kid. It's not something you keep at the forefront of your mind. But when I was 14 years old at summer camp, the Lord reconfirmed it with me. He said, I've called you to youth ministry and all that. And so that was something I was excited for. And then, just throughout the years, confirmation after confirmation. I remember my senior year, our guest speaker at a conference we were at, he prayed for me and he prophesied over me. He's like, you're going to start your ministry early. He's like, you're going to be a young minister, and he's like, you're going to do great things for the Lord. And I was like, okay, great.
Yeah.
And often this little key thing that I learned, I thought my ministry starting was me being a youth pastor. And so I was always gunning for trying to step into that.
Yeah.
But then I realized often people don't realize that sometimes our ministry starting is us helping further another vision.
That's good.
And so one of the things that I got to help with was I got to help further the vision of the youth pastors that I served under.
Right.
And I actually, the Lord talked to me, and I told one of my youth pastors that I was serving under, I said, hey, I was like, I'm not here to get anywhere. I'm not here to get up in front of the kids and be a face of the kids. I was like, the Lord told me that someday I will be in youth ministry and I will be the face up there. I was like, right now I'm sowing seed of being in the background. Yeah. And I was like, whatever you need, whatever takes stress off your shoulders, I'll help with. Yeah. And so that's really what my youth ministry started as. 19 years old, I stepped into junior high ministry. I stayed in junior high ministry until, it was 2020, 2021. And then after that, we actually combined the ministries together, where it was junior high and high school together. So I stepped into that for a while. I actually youth pastored a very small group of kids in Oklahoma City at a sister campus of ours, of Ramos, and was there for a year and 6 months, year and a half. And then I decided to close that church down. So I had, at my peak, I had 8 students. And then by the end, I only had 2 because one of the families that brought the other kids decided that they wanted to go to church somewhere else. So that was okay. But I learned a lot in that ministry, a lot more than I thought I would, about stewarding over the little that the Lord had given me so I could be trusted with more.
Yeah. So now you've been here overseeing our student ministries for a little over 2 years. And it's funny because Pastor Scott and I, we see each other every week, of course, because the office, we're here Monday through Thursday, we're here on Sundays. But I rarely get to see him in his element because youth meets on Wednesdays, and they also have Sunday school on Sundays during 10 o'clock service. But I, being the worship pastor, I'm obviously in service on the platform. And so I've only seen small glimpses of you doing what you do. And one of those was very recently, you had a guys' night, an overnight thing. We started at 6:30 p.m., and it went overnight until 8 a.m. the next day.
Yes.
Great idea.
Terrible idea. Never happening again.
And so you invited me, and I was like, sure. I had a kind of a busy weekend that weekend, but I was like, it'd be good to get away. And so in my mind, I thought to myself, okay, I'm going to go at 6:30. I'm probably going to leave at like midnight. And so I got here at 6:30, but I didn't leave till like 3:30 a.m.
Yeah.
I did not think I was going to stay that late. But I bring that up for a reason. I was going to ask you, you've now been our student ministries pastor for a little over 2 years.
A little over a year.
You've been married for 2 years. My bad. A little over a year, which is still very early. There's still a lot to learn and a lot coming. But so far in this first year, what has been like the most rewarding thing as doing your job, doing what you do? And I know you've only been here a year, and so that may be kind of hard to answer, but so far, what's been the most rewarding thing to see?
The most rewarding thing to see is seeing kids that come every week that it's often the kids that you don't expect that are actually listening.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the times like the
Like when you're a
kids that are
teacher.
the
Yep.
kids that are constantly talking to me like one-on-one,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, okay, they're listening. But there's kids that don't often talk to me that I go up to and I start conversations with, and they just start talking about what I was talking about during the sermons and stuff like that. And for me, the most rewarding thing is truly seeing students realize and make the relationship with God their own
Mm-hmm.
and stop trying to live off of other people's faith.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things that the students that we have here, it's got to be a cultural thing, because when I first started, it was hard for any kid to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
So like during a sermon, it's not in Oklahoma at the church I was at. It's not it's not awkward for a student to be like, "Amen."
Sure.
Like agreeing with what the speaker's speaking. But man, it was hard for me to even get a student to raise their hand and answer a question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like they're just very quiet and they were very quiet and very timid. And it also comes with I was brand new.
You were new. Yeah,
they
they
don't
were
really
filling you
know
out.
me
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm a year in, the Lord has opened my eyes to a lot of different things going around with the students and stuff like that. And so it's been very rewarding to see the students get it.
Yeah.
And so yeah.
That's awesome. What has been kind of an uphill battle or something that you've learned a year in that you're like, I wish I would have known that when I first started? You know what I mean?
One thing I really emphasized on when I first started was being with the high schoolers and trying to pour into them so that they can pour into the younger kids.
Mm-hmm.
But something that the Lord has been opening my eyes to is these younger kids, the junior high students. A lot of people don't understand it, but junior high kids, 6th through 8th grade, they're coming out of a season where in 5th grade and before they were very concrete thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they come out of those younger years into youth, they're still coming out of that concrete thinking stage where you tell them, hey, left is the right answer, not right. They take that as truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I actually had a conversation with a young lady last night, and I was talking to her about her faith and stuff, and I realized, man, she's a junior high girl, but she's living this faith. She's going up, she's worshiping God, openly expressing her feelings to God. And I have high school kids that aren't doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And the Lord really just opened my eyes to every time new students coming in, always constantly pouring into
That's
them.
good.
And that's something I've learned in this last year is to pour into the younger people. Yes, pour into your older students, trust them, raise them up as leaders, but also be pouring into the younger people, because when youth pastors get in that cycle of, I'm just going to stay with the high school kids, and you're a youth pastor that has junior high and high school, then there's a whole generational gap that you're missing.
Yeah.
And that's where kids fall in the crack. And that's truthfully where, if you're not constantly as a youth pastor wanting to build relationships with the next generation coming up, then you're going to get to a point where you're burnt out and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. This isn't exciting anymore. When you stop putting effort into the younger kids in your youth group, then you'll see a trend where they get to high school and you're like, I don't really know you. Truthfully, some people say, I don't really like you. You're not my cup of tea. But it's just because they didn't take the time while they were younger to experience who they are, the talents and gifts that God's given them. And it's the youth pastors waiting too long for them to get into high school. And then they're like,
I've never been a youth pastor, but I was a band teacher in a small town. And so not to bleed my story onto yours, but I grew up in Houston, Texas. Everything's bigger and better. Better in Texas. Anyway, I kid. It's a joke, okay? But anyway, I digress. So I was used to big band programs, and then my first teaching job was this small town, and so it was like one band class, 7th through 12th grade, a lot like how youth works here, and I learned something very similar. And that's what I'm saying is I'm agreeing with you is that I had to invest in those younger junior high players because those junior high players eventually are going to be the key high school players.
Yeah.
And if I lean too much on the older kids, they age out, and then I didn't spend time teaching the fundamentals to the younger ones. When they get old enough, it's like, where are they at? Spiritually, it's the same thing. Those junior high kids, they need to know the spiritual fundamentals and how to read the Bible, how to pray, and all that stuff, because eventually when they get to high school, we want to add to that. So that's fantastic that you say that you've learned to invest in all the generations. And some churches who have different resources than us, they're able to separate junior high and high school ministry. Currently, I say that in faith. Currently, we don't have that here at Morningside. Maybe we will in the future, but it is kind of a unique beast having junior high and high school in the same room. And you also, since you've been here a year, you also had the blessing of seeing a transition. So you recently got a new batch of like sixth graders, right? And so how was that? Was that kind of different?
Pastor Charity does such a great job with these kids.
Yeah, Pastor Charity is our children's pastor.
Yeah, so Pastor Charity does such a great job. When they transition up to me, it's like they've definitely have a foundation poured, and they're passionate about the Lord already. Mm-hmm. And so it's cool to see them transition into that and be in that with us and grow with us. A sixth grader coming in, truthfully, a lot more energy than the rest of the kids.
Of course.
Sometimes the high school kids can get a little annoyed with them and stuff like that. But it's at the point where even if they're 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade, they're going to get the same word of God.
Yeah.
One of my mentors taught me a long time ago, it's never dumb down the word of God.
That's good.
Always make it just clear and pure.
Yeah, that's good.
And the kids will follow along with you. But the sixth graders that we have, they're good kids. They're truthfully very funny.
They are hilarious. They're funny.
And sometimes I look at them, like there's a lot of them were at our guys' night the other night, and it's like 5 a.m. and they're still running around, beating up on each other. And I'm like,
where is this energy coming from?
It's like 4 a.m. and I'm just sitting at a table staring at the wall like I just want to go to sleep. But, sitting there at the guys all nighter thinking I want to sleep, but then hearing Pastor Johnny's voice in the back of my head saying, why did you fall asleep? This happened when
those
you fell asleep.
5 minutes you snooze, you wake up, everything's on fire.
Exactly. And I just remember there was one point I was sitting there and I was dozing, and Dan Olson, one of our leaders, was looking at me, and I just hear him laughing, and I open my eyes, and I'm like, what are you laughing at? And he's like, bro, you were like, your head was like bobbing. And I was like, I got to stand up and do something. I can't fall asleep.
That's awesome. Well, before we go here, just kind of a fun question. And if you don't have an answer, I got plenty of answers for this, so you better have an answer. Can you share an embarrassing moment that's happened since you've worked here? Something that happened either at the office or in front of students.
Oh, my gosh.
I've got plenty of answers, so you...
Embarrassing stories about me or you?
You. Something that's happened. No, not me. You. This is about you.
Well, I'll tell one.
Or funny.
I'll tell one,
or
and
funny.
then you can tell one.
Okay.
So one of the things that my students have not let me down about is let me live down is we were at a live conference in Des Moines, Iowa. Yeah. We went to Pizza Ranch for dinner. Mm-hmm. I was given a set of keys for the
this
van
is one I had in mind.
that had 2 different keys. And, me being a normal person, I think this one key goes to everything. This one key I had went to starting the van, and the other key that I left in my backpack in the van was the one that unlocked the van. Mm-hmm. Make a long story short, get out there. I realized I locked all of us high school boys out of this in the middle of February in Des Moines, Iowa.
Yeah.
It is freezing cold, and I had to call a locksmith to come and pick the van lock to get us back in. And that was not only the worst part, was I didn't think anybody was going to find out here in the ministry. Yeah, this is the best
part of the story.
And then I get a random text from our executive pastor, Pastor Bill, and he said, hey, who locked their keys in the car? And I said, who told you? And he said, what do you mean? I was like, how'd you know that? And he said, he's the financial pastor, so he sees all of our stuff. And he said, yeah, I saw that there was a charge for a lockpick on your bento card. And I was like, oh, no.
That's funny.
And so he knew, and so I laughed and told him it was me, and I explained the story, and he got a good kick out of it. But it's something I've still never.
I was going to say, ever since then, I'm like, this is never going to go away. You realize that, right?
And it's
even here at the office, you're like, you got your keys, Scott? Don't give Scott the van keys.
Which I want to explain something.
Oh, no.
People make fun of me for losing my keys.
No,
but
that's
in
enough.
A normal day with Pastor Aaron.
We're about out of time.
In a normal day with Pastor Aaron, he will ask you about 6 times, hey, have you seen my keys?
Yeah, this is true.
And he's had to be led in his office multiple times.
This is
and
true.
I'm the one.
But you're
that
the one that's
of.
the butt of that joke. It's so funny.
But there's one specific student that no matter how long it's been, the students will forget about it. You know, a lot of the students don't even talk about it anymore. They're bringing it up randomly. But this one student, every week, hey, you remember that one time you locked your keys
That's
in the van?
funny.
And
That's
I'm
just how
like,
students are.
and I literally was talking on a sermon of forgiveness, and he's like,
Forgiveness.
he's like, hey, we forgive you for locking the keys in the van. And I said,
funny.
I forgive you for remembering that because you're the only one that brings it up anymore.
That's funny. Yeah, that's the iconic Scott is now on the staff like story moment. You know?
Actually, this was a story I've actually never really told people, but some staff members know. So when I first started, we did a thing called Citywide, where churches from the city gathered together and celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we brought a lot of our equipment, so I had a trailer on the van that I had brought, that I drove there, and you know, I put the lock on the back of the thing after the trailer door, which was like a ramp, and I left the lock on there, and I was like, oh, you know, I'll leave my keys in there. Well, little did I know that when I dropped the thing, the lock moved out, and I bent the key to the lock.
Oh,
And so I went to our maintenance guy, John, and I was like, hey, I bent this key. I'm so sorry. It was his master key.
oh my gosh.
And I bent it. And he said, Scott, I've been here for a long time. And I've never once had a pastor bend a key like that.
That's funny.
He's like, actually, I've never had a pastor break or bend a key. And he's like, and you bent this key
You're
to where
setting the bar high.
this was the key, and the actual part of the key that goes in the lock was like this. And so I bent a lock key very badly.
There's just something about you and keys, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
locking keys, bending keys. That's funny. But well, Pastor Scott, thanks for sharing your testimony. It's been fun getting to know you. You and I have gotten to know each other really well because like we spend all this time in the office together.
Yeah, a
throughout
lot
the
of our
week.
projects are together.
Yeah, a lot of our projects, I help him, he helps me, and so it's been really fun getting to know you. And thank you for all you do for our students. We here at Morningside are believing that there are just the greatest is yet to come for our kids, for the next generation. And so thank you for pouring into them. Before we go, really quickly, just really bullet point, can you share the trips you've been a part of, and maybe if there's any coming up in the near future that you can share about very quickly?
The trips I've been a part of is we went to Fall Convention. After that, in February, we went to a live conference. My favorite week of the year, summer camp. Mm-hmm. And then the July summer camp was in June. In July of last year, we took 6 students to El Salvador.
Yeah, I was getting at mission trips. So mission trips. Yeah.
So
can you quickly share the mission trips you've been a part of with students?
Okay, students. So there was a mission trip that we took as a church that some of my students went on, and I was like, you know, I'm freshly here, so I'm going to go on this trip with them. We went to Mexico in March of last year and did a construction mission trip with some of the students, which was one of my favorite trips. The missionaries we work with out there are amazing. Kelly and Lloyd are awesome. And then we took 6 students to El Salvador in July. And then this year in 2020, next year in 2024, we will be taking students. Hopefully, our goal is to take 15 people. We're hoping to take a group of students we are going to be taking a group of students to Brazil.
That's going to be amazing. That's
and
exciting.
So we're going to be able to take them, get them experienced in the land, get them some more students. I'm sure that the 6 that went with us last year will go this year again. So after that, we're trying to get some fresh faces on the team to take with us so that they can experience missions.
Missions trips are amazing. They're life-changing for the people that you minister to and you, the people that go. And so I wanted to thank you for all you do for our kids, but thank you for also bringing that emphasis on missions. It's important for our students to see that and understand that, and it's really exciting. There's some exciting things ahead that we're a little too early, can't share, but it's amazing. So thank you again for all that you do, Pastor Scott.
Cohesion in the church is important. So from
alignment,
early childhood all the way to adults, we want missions minded.
Absolutely. So, well, thanks again for doing this. Thank you everyone who's watching and or listening. This is still very new. This is episode 1. You're watching history right now. And so thanks for being a part of it. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. That would be really helpful. And share the word about this. There's a lot more to come. So thanks again for listening.